everyone, Hafsa here, and today we'll be talking about working in the 2D animation industry, some common roles in the commercial environment, and the difference between working as part of a team and in independent production. So first, let's talk a little bit about the industry. So 2D animation is present all around us, from the obvious movies and shows to music videos, commercials, video games, infomercials, explanatory videos, to even logo design and your interactive screen. The list goes on and on and on. You have so many options. After everything we've done in this course, you've probably already realized that animation is very time-consuming to produce. In today's standard, each second of animation requires between 8 to 24 frames per second, depending on your frame rate. So you're potentially looking at 24 sketches, cleanup 24 times, coloring and shading 24 times, and adding lighting 24 times for each second of your project, with each drawing needing to be perfect with the amount of details, proportions, and poses to create an animation effect, which is pretty intimidating and exhausting and sometimes even impossible depending on the size of your project. So, in a way, there is a limit to the capabilities of one individual, both in what they can physically make and their skill set. But this is exactly why the industry is so big and varied. There is a space for everyone in this industry, from independent creators who make everything themselves, like what I do, people who specialize in small projects, to small teams that take middle-range projects with their specific animation styles, or big productions that made by collaborations of small studios or major studios. Every kind of production size has its own corresponding creators. You can choose how you fit into the industry in many ways and for many reasons. The great thing about this industry is the amount of freedom and power that you have as a creator in it. So in today's lesson, I'll be talking about the different roles you will commonly find in the industry, as well as the pros and cons of working as either a freelancer or as part of a studio. The 2D animation industry is a global industry, and in today's digital age and the use of digital software for production, you no longer need to work in the same environment to be part of a team, studio, or a project. With the wide exposure animation gets, clients from all over the world will look for the exact talents they want for their project, and it's not unusual for people with many different origins to work together in all levels of production. The way the industry works is very simple. A client commissions a product. It can be as small as a couple of seconds or as big as a feature film or a show, and the creators provide the product. Apart from a couple of major studios that will often have the viewerships or the fans to commission themselves, and thus will always have multiple projects you can join, you will probably won't find one production to work with long term. And even if you do join as part of a studio in a permanent role, each individual project is going to finish after a certain amount of time, so you will always have to move from project to project. The industry, especially in Europe and Japan, is full of small studios who employ individual animators to work as part of a team on certain projects, or sometimes individual scenes, after which your employment with the studio ends unless they want you for multiple or following projects. These employment terms can be between a couple of days to a couple of years, depending on the project and your role in it, but you will often switch between productions, clients, and team throughout your career. The three biggest markets of 2D animation currently are the USA, Japan, and France, each one with their own production procedure. The way this production works, however, your job security, your payment, and the workload will greatly depend on the market your team and clients are part of. In the USA, you will often find big and established studios with hundreds or thousands of employees, each working in their own role on their assigned scenes, and where you will often find work being exported into smaller and foreign studios to make the entire production cheaper for the producers. Depending on where you work and the states and union laws in your area, As part of an American studio, you will have an assigned role and will usually be paid with a salary. The USA has the biggest animation industry in terms of profits and monetization, but the actual biggest industry in terms of volume of content is Japan. In Japan, you will find thousands of studios, ranging from small to big, and production will often be made by a couple of studios working together, or by hiring individual freelance contractors to make additional scenes and supplement additional workforce. And as an animator in the Japanese industry, you will usually have to handle multiple roles in the production. You have a pretty good chance to get hired for a job by a Japanese studio, since they contact people from all over the world, but only for a number of scenes or shots in the production. So unless you're going to be part of a studio in a permanent role, you would usually not be able to take part in the more decision-based roles, such as storyboarder or director. And you will have to work specifically in the same manner as any other employee in the studio. So if you have differing software or differing animation methods, you might not be able to be employed by them. In Japan, the payment is usually made depending on your production, so it will be by scene, shot, or frame. So you're not guaranteed a base and constant salary, and your payment will depend on the speed and quality of your production. And since Japanese animation tends to be quite complicated, a lot of the time the actual payment is quite low. In France and the rest of Europe, you will also find multiple small studios working together, with each studio often having their own distinct style and handling medium-sized projects, with studio collaborations being done for bigger projects. These studios sometimes hire freelancers and contractors as well, but will usually require you to physically move to the environment or the studio. In Europe, you will usually be paid a salary or by hourly rate. And again, you will need to fit with the software and style requirement of your production. The last option is working as an independent animator. This will allow you to get clients from all over the world, but you will have the freedom to calculate your payment and rates according to your own methods, be it per frame, per second, per scene, per hour, project, term, or any other options that works for you. It is important to consider your client's or employer's standard market though, and be flexible with your methods, or you might end up not getting the job, if your standards are too different from your client's standards. As said at the beginning of the video, and as we've seen throughout the course, animation is a very time-consuming and complicated process, and this is why it's usually done in a team. In a team, the workload is divided between many people, each with their own role on the production line and their own responsibilities. Since the animation process is very linear, with each step building upon the one before it, each person will work on many different scenes, and will continue making the same type of work. So by joining a team, you can aim to work in the part of the process that you like, and avoid the parts of the process that you really hate doing. There are many different roles and sub-roles in the industry, and every production has slightly different role arrangements, with sometimes specialized or individual roles, depending on the size of the production. That being said, there are a number of general roles you will find in almost every project. Starting from the top, the executive producer is the main provider of finance for your project. This can either be your actual client who commissions the animation, or it can be the person raising the funds for the project. It can be the person presenting the pitch to the potential clients or investors, the broadcasting company looking for content, or even internal production in studios or independent creation. Without this role, you would not have the funds or the ability to even start and get your team for your project. And if you are an independent animator who wants to be an independent producer, you still need to get the funds to live. So, if you are an independent animator, you're also a producer. The actual producer is the person responsible for the entire production process from start to finish. They are the one responsible for the management of the project, securing the funds from the executive producers, calculating the budget for the production and dividing it between the workers, keeping track of deadlines, assigning tasks, checking the quality of the product and delivering it, and any other task required to keep the production going. The producer will have to work with many types of people in many capacities throughout the production, from negotiations with the clients to conflict resolve between management and creators, to actual communication with the workers and artists. So it's important to know every part of the process to have this role, even if not to the same level as the actual technical artist who creates the product. Essentially, the producer role is to be the troubleshooter for the entire production, making sure that it will be completed and make it as efficient as possible. In small production, the producer will also be the director, as part of the job is to keep track on quality. But in bigger productions, the director will be a separate role. Moving on to the director, this is the person responsible for having the vision for the project and ensuring that it gets created according to this vision. The director is the person who decides on the overall look of the scene, and they must have a clear understanding of the story or the purpose of the animation, and will be the one to give the instruction as to how to create the scene in a way that represents these ideas best. They will give the guidelines and descriptions on which you will work, as well as input on corrections. As a director, you must have good artistic vision, be decisive, and have good communication skills, so that you can effectively get your ideas animated. The director also must understand the process of animation in great detail, so they can get on the same page with the artist and inspire them to create their vision. Below the director, we have the assistant director. This is not a role that appears in every production, and usually only happens in big projects which have many people working on them. Essentially, the assistant director is the communicator between the different production departments and the director. They will handle giving directions, solving technical difficulties, giving small corrections during the creation process, or even translating the creator's vision into the actual practical terms relevant to your department, in case where the director comes from a different field and might not be familiar with the terminology or techniques of the project. In essence, they are a buffer between the artist and the director, and ensure that the director's vision gets done, as well as support the director and provide input and second opinion. The writer's role is pretty self-explanatory, but basically, this is the person providing the script for the animation. This can either be a specialized role or just a secondary role of the people making the production. You will often get a script or a story from the executive producers as they create the production to tell their own story, and in smaller production, the director might be the writer as well. In really small productions, or in productions that allow a lot of creative freedom from the different artists working on it, you might even see writers between your storyboard artist or pre-production designers. And of course, if you are an independent animator, you will also be responsible for being the writer of your story. Next, we have the designers. They are responsible for creating the style rules for the animation, giving each production its own recognizable and special look that distinguishes it from any other animation. The designer's job is to basically create the guidelines according to which the rest of the artists are going to base their own drawings upon. The designer is also responsible to make sure that every part of the visuals work together, be it characters, background, props, and even effects and compositing assets. The designer's job is to make sure that they create a coherent and aesthetically pleasing look for the animation. And depending on the size of your production, you might have multiple different designers. They can either work on different types of assets, such as having character designers, background designers, or prop designers, or they can be responsible for certain sequences or scenes. The designer's job is to work with the director and present a large number of options for them to choose from to make their vision. To be a designer, you must have good technical drawing skills, design principles, and understanding of shape language, and again, good communication skills. The designer's assets will later be used by the rest of the team to draw from for their own asset creation, or to reference to make sure that the style is being kept. The storyboarder is the person responsible for designing each individual scene and shot assigned to them. In a sense, they are the practical directors, and in small productions, directors might also be storyboard artists. They are responsible for the composition of each scene, giving the baseline for the animators and background artists to work from, as well as for the timing if they bring the storyboard to the animatic stage. The storyboard artist will work directly with the directors or assistant directors and will usually focus more on speed and try and work through large number of scenes quickly, keeping the storyboard as a sketch and trying to give as much information as possible efficiently. The storyboarder has to have good communication skills, good understanding of cinematic rules, and good art fundamentals, as they need to make sure that the general character shape and model are being kept and that the perspective of the shot is correct, so that the animators and background artists can do their job properly. The animator is the person creating the actual movement in each shot, from action to acting to effects. The animator has to have very good art skills. They need to have a good understanding of what they are drawing, every angle, every position, how it can theoretically move, and have the skills to draw that action correctly. Animators also need to have good understanding of acting and people, as well as good communication skills, so that they can immediately understand how to make the movement requested of them and how to correct and adjust it if needed. Animators also need good observational skills, because you will often find yourself animating objects or characters that you haven't encountered before, especially if you're moving between productions with each one of them having a different style. You will need to be able to recognize differences between art styles and objects and be comfortable with drawing them even if you haven't done them before. Depending on the size and type of a production, the animator role can be divided to multiple positions and people. In some productions, you will have key animators, which are responsible for the important poses and overall timing, and in-betweeners, which are responsible to fill in the gaps and smooth out the transition between each keyframe. And in some cases, this role will be combined with the cleanup artist as well. In bigger productions or studios, you will also find people who specialize in different objects in animation, such as character animators, effect animators, and animal or prop animators. Working alongside the animators, we have the background artist. The background artist is responsible for creating the finished background for each shot from the storyboard. They will add the colors, values, lighting, and details to the layout drawn by the storyboarder and give it a finished look. The background artist needs to have good understanding on coloring and painting techniques, as well as good drawn fundamentals to be able to add all the details in the scene. They must have a great attention to details and be organized in their creation process, as the background needs to be designed with animation and camera movement behind it, and thus made in advance with that in mind, so that it can be worked on by the compositors. Again, background artists need to have good observational skills and be adaptable so that they can create many different scenes with many objects that they might not have encountered before. The last artistic role in the production pipeline is the compositor. The compositor is responsible to bringing all of the elements of each shot together, from the different layers of the background, the animation itself, the character and environment lighting, and camera movement. The compositor has the last step on the production, and after moving through it, we have the final product. The compositor must have good understanding of their software as well as good organizational skills, and they must be able to communicate effectively and work quickly, since in many cases they won't have a lot of time to actually complete their step in the animation process. Last, we have the supportive roles. The main three roles in that category is the in-betweener, which is responsible to adding frames and smoothing out movements, the cleanup artist, which is responsible for making the messy sketches of the animators into understandable drawings with clear, precise lines, and the colorist, which is responsible to adding the base colors to the animation itself. These roles are usually done by beginners in the industry, and they are very technical and often repetitive and boring, but they do give good fundamentals and help you hone your skills. These roles require a lot of patience and good attention to details. Now that we know the basic role in the industry and how it functions as a whole, let's talk about deciding your own personal role in it. There are two main options for you to take as an animator: working as a part of a studio or working as a freelancer, each with their own pros and cons. Starting with working as part of a studio production's best feature is the stability that comes with being part of a team. Even though the production size is much bigger than what you will have in independent animation, the workload and responsibility is divided between multiple people, each equipped to fulfill the role entirely. You can always find support and help within your own team, and leave the roles that you dislike to the people working on them, making sure that you can do the parts that you find the most fun, and the studio will have people handling the administrative jobs as well, letting you focus specifically on your creative process. The studio environment provides more job security and a better guarantee of income, as the studio itself has more projects than what you will get as an individual, and the task of finding more clients is not a concern to you, unless you're aiming for one of the producer roles. Another great benefit of studios is that they can be good environments for your growth as an artist. When you're taking part in a big project, you will work with the best of the best, creative people like you who are passionate and dedicated to their work, and have the skills to match. It can be an amazing experience, and with the amount of work which is required of you, you'll be able to improve very quickly. In a studio environment, you will never lack in work and ideas, so you will always get to be creative. That being said, there are drawbacks to working with a studio as well. A studio environment is pretty rigid. You will be required to work certain hours, be part of certain environments and teams, and work only on the job assigned to you. You will not have much freedom with creative choices and will often not have the opportunity to experiment, as a production purpose is to create the product as quickly and efficiently as possible. If your studio environment is not run properly, this can easily lead to cases of overwork, tight deadlines, and overall stressful environment. Another drawback is the lack of individual credit. Although you are part of a production and will be credited with everyone else at the end credits, it's pretty hard to get individually recognized as part of a big production. Each person is responsible for such a small part, which they cannot have a lot of creative freedom over, so the chances of you creating something outstanding within your scenes are very small, even if the overall product is amazing. Moving on to freelance work, the best part of being a freelancer is the great amount of freedom and power that you have over your work. As a freelancer, same as with studio work, you can choose to join a team in a specific role, in which case you will be an independent contractor and reap some of the benefits of a studio worker, or you can take on independent projects where you fill in every role in the production process. You're also in complete control over your schedule, the amount of work you take, your prices, and the general process of animation. You can work wherever and whenever you like, and only take jobs that interest you. The amount of creative freedom you have as a freelance and independent producer is also much greater than you would have in a studio, only needing to conform to your client's wishes, which they will often let you handle completely as they don't really have put together vision in their head. And by being the main creator, you will get much more recognition and credit for your work as an individual. The main drawbacks to being an independent animator is the bigger amount of stress it can create. First, as a freelancer, you will have to waste quite a lot of time just finding work to take. You will need to constantly submit your portfolio and chase after clients. essentially limiting your job choices if you don't have many to choose from. And even after all of that, you might not have guaranteed income. It will fluctuate quite a lot depending on the amount of projects that you have, which will be affected by both your individual capacity as well as the type of people who see your product. You will need to have a very good understanding of your own capabilities and organize your time and schedule to make sure that you don't take too many projects or overwork yourself, as well as fulfill all of your obligations to your clients and keep on top of deadlines. As an independent animator, you will have to be capable in any part of the animation process and be able to match your client's demands. So you will need to have a wide range of art styles and capabilities to get as many job opportunities as possible. You will also have a greater amount of responsibilities specifically on you, and will not be able to get away from parts of the animation production process which you don't like doing. Lastly, you will have to deal with your client's requests and criticism of you specifically, trying to work and figure out the vision of people who often don't have background in art and don't know how to describe what they want, or even have a clear vision of it, which can be quite challenging and frustrating at times. To summarize, when deciding between studio and freelance, you will need to choose between security and freedom, control and pressure. Either path can be very rewarding, and you can always switch between them as long as you have the right skills. To recap, today we learned about the different roles in the industry and the paths that you can take in your own career. After completing this course, you've had a taste of each role, and you will probably be able to expand and aim towards your desired goal and the career path that you want to do. And if you're only here as part of a hobby, or you haven't clearly decided that you want to take part in the industry, this lesson might have helped you get some context and ideas of what types of work you can do, as well as maybe have some appreciations to the amount of work that goes into the industry itself. Thank you for watching, and see you next time for the conclusion. Bye!